The Book of Revelation. One of the most amazing and craziest and mystifying books of the Bible. Also a really popular one. A lot of people have heard of this book, but we don't quite know how to read it or make sense of it. Here to give us some keys for understanding and reading this book, Dr. Michael Barber, Professor of Theology at the Augustine Institute. So to the person of faith, you read the book of Revelation, there's things in it that are mind-blowingly beautiful, a whole lot of it that is really confusing. For the person who has no faith, they pick up the book of Revelation and think, is this an acid trip? I mean, this is just like, this is craziness. What am I reading? I have no idea how to make sense of this at all. Help us unlock this.
Right. I think one of the things that you hear a lot of are speculations about when is Jesus coming back and are we living in the end times? And so a lot of people read the book of Revelation with sort of one eye on the biblical text and the other eye on sort of the news headlines, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, this is happening in the Middle East, therefore this must be a sign that the end is near. And that's not the way the book of Revelation is meant to be read. You know, when people hear the word apocalypse, they think of devastation. They think of cataclysmic destruction, doom. But the word apocalypse actually means to reveal, revelation, right?
So that's another name for the book of Revelation?
Right, the apocalypse.
The apocalypse.
Right? And so because apocalypse is linked to the book of Revelation, which describes Jesus coming at the end of time, any movie, any story that seems to point to cataclysmic destruction, end times, is seen as apocalyptic, right? But really the word apocalypse means to reveal.
Ooh, beautiful.
And so now,
hence Revelation.
Right, yeah. Now you might say, well, okay, or to take the veil away,
Ooh,
right?
I love that.
So for a lot of people,
my daughter just got married. You know, take the veil away. This is a beautiful image.
Yes, right. It is. It is, and actually the book ends with a wedding. So there is maybe some connection there. But the thing is, I think for a lot of people, if this is what unveiling is, then put the veil back on. I mean, beasts and dragons. I mean, I'd rather not. Fire and plagues and all this. I mean, when people think of the book of Revelation, what comes to mind? I think what immediately comes to mind is things like the Antichrist, or the mark of the beast, or the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, or plagues, right? Things like that. The beast, I already mentioned that. The dragon, you read about that.
Yeah. There's a lot of different heads.
Right. You know, the reality is when people sort of make those things the ultimate truth of the book of Revelation, it's sort of obvious they've actually never read the book. Because the word Antichrist actually never appears in the book of Revelation. Though the idea of the mark of the beast only appears once. The 4 horsemen only occur really about Revelation 6 and then 7, and they really don't play a huge role in the rest of the story. The millennium, the 1,000 years.
They're striking images.
They're striking images, right? But they're not the major theme of the book. What's the major theme of the book? Is that Christ is coming.
We need a theme to make sense of the rest.
That's right. And the idea is that Christ is coming. He's coming. And certainly what the book wants us to see is that despite all the difficulties that we face in this world, and despite the fact that satanic powers are at work with world powers and political powers to conspire against the righteous. That's a major theme in the book. There's hope, because at the end of the story, Christ is coming, and the righteous will be delivered, and they will find salvation in the Savior, who's described over and over again in the book as the Lamb. And one of the things that's really interesting about the book is that it describes Christ coming all throughout with liturgical images. Images from worship, right? Liturgy, worship.
Which was going on in the early church when this was written.
Yeah, and it was well rooted in ancient Judaism. So you see things like altars and incense and men wearing white vestments, right? And the whole idea is Christ coming is described through this imagery. One of the key ideas in Revelation is that Christ is coming not just at the end of time, but to his people even now. Not long ago,
Beautiful.
I was invited to be interviewed on a national television show about the book of Revelation.
Really?
And they asked me, so when is Jesus coming? I said, I can tell you when Jesus is coming. They were taken aback. Really? Well, when is it going to be? And I said, well, in Revelation 3, Jesus says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone opens the door, I will come into him and I will eat with him.
Ooh, I love it.
And he with
Love
me.
it.
So Jesus' coming is linked to a meal. Now, is there any meal that the early Christians might have celebrated
let's think.
in which they thought Jesus was
This is
present
starting to
with
sound
them?
really Catholic right now.
It is. Yeah, it is. And in fact, there is that meal. It's the Eucharist. So Christ is coming at the end of time, but the book of Revelation also wants to give us comfort. Christ is coming to us
No.
in the church's celebration of that meal.
And that's
In
how
the
you get
Eucharist.
ready for when he comes at the end of time.
That's right. And
or at the end of our own lives.
That's
Because
exactly right.
No one gets out alive.
That's right. So if we are just ready to receive him when he comes to us, when we gather to celebrate the Eucharist on Sunday, if I was ready to receive him on Sunday, I've got nothing to worry about when he comes at the end of time.
Praise
Because
God.
when he comes at the end of time, he's not going to have one drop of glory he doesn't already have when he comes to us in the Eucharistic celebration.
That's awesome. So this is the way to understand the whole arc of Revelation.
I think
If you really want to get into reading it and
Right.
try to grasp the meaning of all the various images, that takes more work and study. That's
Right.
not something you
Definitely.
just read peripherally
Definitely.
into your day. And it's,
Definitely.
I get it. What point us to some resources if someone wants to dive
The
in?
key thing that we need to recognize is that when we read the Bible isn't just what God said, it's what God says. God is always speaking to us. When you read the Apocalypse, you find all this imagery that might seem scary. You know, you have these beasts and you have these dragons. Like, I don't know how to make heads or tails of this book, or it's beasts and it's dragons. You know, like,
And their
how
heads
do
and
I
tails.
yes, exactly. But the thing that we need to recognize is Christ is speaking to us in all of these images. If we sat down with our Bibles, open them up, ask the Lord, speak to me in this. What are you trying to tell me? I think one of the key things he wants us to see is that he is with his people. And at the end of the story, he saves his people, and God is faithful. So, it may get hard.
Yeah.
In fact, it will get hard. You can count on it. Look
yeah.
at what they did to Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So if they treat the king that way, they're not going to roll the red carpet out for his subjects.
Yeah.
But at the end of the story, Christ comes, and he saves his people, and he's with us.
The way to understand the book of Revelation is the victorious coming of Christ, the bridegroom, drawing us into that wedding feast. When you see that overarching theme, it helps you make sense of the book. But you know what? It helps you make sense of, well, the rest of the Bible, frankly, and your entire life. You see, the story's end helps you discern the meaning of every page in the story. And the end of our story is really, really good.